Stick around today and we'll talk about the most important piece of music theory you will learn, the major scale. Hey everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to the Overdrive Guitar channel, or if you've been here before, welcome back. Today is going to be a look at the major scale. This is going to be the first look, and since I believe that lessons, whether they're online or in person, should be kind of taken in digestible chunks that you can then take and apply without getting overwhelmed, this is going to be kind of our first look, kind of telling you why the major scale is so important. It is super important. It is, in fact, the most important piece of theory that you will learn. I'm going to show you how to play it, and I'm going to show you why you need to know how to play it, and why it's going to kind of supercharge your guitar journey to know it and to know the formula. And probably talk about some other stuff that I can't think of right now. Okay, so for now, as a beginner, which this kind of lesson is aimed at, if you haven't clued in yet and you're an intermediate player, this lesson probably isn't for you, although boning up on the major scale, I guess, is never a bad idea. Anyways, so first of all, before we look at this scale, I'd just like to take a second to say that guitar is my absolute passion. I'm trying to do a good thing here, share it with everybody. If you could give me a like and a subscribe, it would go a long way to supporting me. Doesn't cost a thing. Hopefully I can get this thing rolling so I can share guitar and everything guitar has done for me with more people. The more likes and subscribes I get, the more content I make. Hopefully the better I can get at it. So if you can, hit the like and subscribe. Enough of that. Back to the lesson. So the major scale is so important because it's basically our reference point for everything we're going to learn. It's our reference point for playing songs if we're using the Nashville numbers. It's our reference point every time we learn a new scale. Every time we describe a movement, we use the major scale constantly, every single day as musicians and guitar players. We need to know it, first of all, and second of all, it's going to save us a lot of time. And I'm going to show you exactly how when I show you a breakdown of the formula and how that helps you later in this video. Of course, there's a couple other reasons why the major scale is so important. Things like improvisation, picking up songs by ear easier, things like that. But the main thing, for me at least in my guitar journey, when I realized that knowing the formula for the major scale and being able to alter it saved me from having to memorize tons and tons and tons of scales, that took a big burden off my shoulders. So let's take a look at the major scale, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about, how we're going to use it, and how it's going to save us some time. Okay, so we're going to be playing the G major scale, and I'm going to be showing you a 3-note per string pattern. But the pattern isn't the important thing. The important thing is the intervals or the formula that makes up the scale. So this is how I'm going to play it. And I'll put a diagram up on the screen. Okay, real simple. It's 3, 5, 7 on the E and the A string, and then 4, 5 on the D. Okay, that should be a familiar sound just from basically childhood songs, things like that. The major scale should probably be the most familiar sound to your ears in the beginning of your journey. So what is it about the major scale that we should take and apply to our journey to really help us out? Well, it's the formula of intervals that makes up the major scale. Sorry, before I show you the formula, an important thing that I need to make sure that you guys understand is the way the guitar is set up. So every fret on the guitar is what's referred to musically as a half step. Therefore, every 2 frets is a whole step. So we're going to take a look again at the major scale, and this time I'm just going to say the intervals, which should be pretty obvious, right? That's our 1, our 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then our next note is our octave or our root note over again. Okay? So the formula is a whole step. So the formula, starting from our root note, we have our root note, and we go a whole, another whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, another whole step, and then a half step. So put it simply, it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This is a super simple formula that is going to pay dividends to know it in your guitar journey, especially when we get into the modes, things like that. We won't get into it at all here. No need to cloud our minds with that. Let's stick to the major scale. So now, keeping in mind this formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, that's all we need to stick to stay within our major scale. So, like I said before, that 3-note per string pattern, the pattern was not important. The intervals were. And in fact, most people, when they're learning, I like to show them like this on 1 string, so you can actually see the intervals plainly in front of you. And it's something I recommend if you're having a hard time grasping it. So if we do it all on 1 string, it's going to look like this. Okay, it's a little easier to visualize at first when you're not so familiar with the guitar neck and how it's laid out. Now, like I said, this is the G major scale, but the notes are not important. Like I said before, the formula is. Now, wherever we start from, we could start from our B, we could start from our A right here. Doesn't matter, as long as we follow that formula, we're playing the major scale. Now, wherever we start, obviously, is going to be our root note. So the A major scale, we start at A, and we use our formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? We can find the major scale anywhere on the neck in any key with a little practice. So I mentioned earlier that this is going to save us from having to memorize lots and lots of things when we're learning our scales, and it's going to make our scales easier to learn. And in fact, it's kind of the only way to learn our scales is to know the note's position in reference to the notes of the major scale. It's how we communicate it. So, the formula, let's take a look at the A minor pentatonic scale. So I'll put some tabs up on the screen, and like I said, just like the major scale, the position isn't important, the intervals are. So the formula for the minor pentatonic scale, we have our root, in this case our A. Now we have our minor third, or our flat third. So what does that mean? Well, if we don't know our note, we find our third note of our major scale, and the formula says minor third or flat third, so we flatten it by 1 fret or 1/2 step, and there's our next interval. Now, hopefully you can see, we'll do it again. So the next note in the scale is the fourth, which you can play here. Now, you can already see why it's so important, I hope you can see why it's so important to know the major scale. I just said we're going to play our fourth. Well, if you don't know your intervals of the major scale and how it's made up, you're going to have no clue what the fourth is. Hopefully you kind of get what I'm saying. This is basically a part of a language. I have a video, in fact, called Music is a Language, because I believe music is a language. It's a way to communicate. So these scales and formulas are basically just like our alphabet and, our grammar and stuff like that. It's actually very basic. And once you really start to see the way that this is done, the way these formulas are broken down, you'll kind of have a weight lifted off of you, like I said before, because suddenly you realize it's not so complicated. Now, once again, the A minor pentatonic scale, we're going to use the major scale as our reference. Every scale, we use the major scale as our reference, whether it's a minor scale or not. The reason I repeat this is because a lot of people have a problem grasping that concept, and I, as a beginner, before I knew better, actually assumed that there was different intervals to draw from for the A minor scale, not knowing that we're just basically altering the major scale to get the minor scale. I was very confused. Hopefully this will help some people and save them from some confusion. Okay, so this was a quick look at the major scale, a quick first look. Like I said in the beginning, I believe lessons should be in small, digestible chunks that you can then go apply in your playing for a while before you try to pick up another concept. You want to really cement these concepts in before moving on and kind of confusing yourself, especially in the beginning of your guitar journey. So to kind of recap the things we touched on, the major scale, why it's so important, because it's the reference point for pretty much musical language or describing anything in music. The major scale is the foundation for all scales. It's the foundation for all chords in Western music. It is the most important piece of theory that you will learn. Another thing we touched on is not to get overwhelmed by the sheer number of scales that are out there. If you want to be a lead player or you want to be a complete player and know all your scales, you're never going to memorize them all and retain them all. But what you can retain is formulas, and what you can retain is ear training. Your ear is going to take over more than anything once you get further along in your guitar journey. But for now, why not use a quick reference like the major scale? In my opinion, it's the only way to get through this journey. So that spills right into my last point. Spend some time with the major scale. Despite being one of the most basic and earliest concepts we learn, maybe not the most exciting sounding, it's crucial and it's going to take us everywhere in our guitar journey. I was going to say it's going to take us so far, but the only way we can get anywhere really is by being familiar with the major scale. Hopefully, I've drilled the importance of the major scale enough. Thank you guys. More to come on the major scale. Like and subscribe, hit that bell if you want to see my upcoming videos and know when new stuff is coming out. Till then, keep rocking, guys.